Pull the string, pull the string!
Scoodly, wow, wow, wow.
Bay Area Backstage.
The human brain contains 100 billion neurons. Each neuron is as powerful as a large computer, and each neuron has around 10,000 connections with other neurons within our foreheads.
M. Suggested for mature audiences. Parental discretion advised.
Hey everybody, this is David Ellefson from Megadeth, and you are watching Bay Area Backstage. It's an interesting story being here, especially in the Bay Area. And I grew up on a farm outside of a little tiny town in Minnesota, a little town called Jackson, Minnesota. Started playing bass when I was 11, got into my first band when I was 12. Gigged around the Midwest, but when I was 18, 5 days after I graduated high school, I moved out to Los Angeles where I met Dave Mustaine. We started Megadeth, and that was in June of 1983. You know, my parents were very supportive of me. My father passed away April 2nd, 1994, which is actually my wedding day, and so kind of a bittersweet for me. But I learned shortly after he passed away, when I went back to the funeral in Minnesota, I was living in Arizona at the time, where I now live in Scottsdale, and a lot of his friends told me, I got to learn a lot. It's funny how I learned a lot about him, you know, once he had passed on, because they would tell these stories. One of the things I learned is that he wanted to be an architect, and he went to the University of Minnesota, I believe straight out of high school, and but had to return back to the farm to take over and run the farm. So as a result, he, to some degree, maybe didn't get to pursue his passion, which was architecture. And so I think when he saw me growing up and saw that I was passionate about music, I have an older brother who took over our family farming operation. And I think once my father knew that the legacy of the Ellefson family and our land was going to be secured there with my brother, that he really got behind me, even though my dad had a tin ear, as he would say. He had no musical aptitude at all. But he really got it. He understood business. He got behind it. He understood it. And, you know, it's funny because he would, every time he'd see me and Dave, you know, he'd always give us, you know, like, you need to stop swearing on stage. You guys got to write more mainstream songs. And he would give us good fatherly advice. Ironically, probably not much different than people in show business would probably give us too. You know, that kind of you know, direction and advice. And my mother grew up music fan, saw Elvis a couple of times when she was a kid. In fact, actually, I think saw him at the Veterans Auditorium in Des Moines, Iowa, because she grew up in Iowa, and actually caught one of Elvis's scarf. He like handed a scarf out, and she got it. I think still has it to this day. And so she, you know, then she sang in the church choir, of course, you know, once me and my brother were growing up. And so, but she was very, very much had a you know, musical bones in her body. So. But they were both very supportive. I mean, certainly sending their son off to, you know, or letting me go off to Hollywood, California at 18 years of age was definitely a very brave move for them. And, you know, I survived it. I mean, there was some wear along the way, but I survived it and you know, coincidentally have then gone on to, you know, have a great life and a great career as a result of that. So fortunately, my parents, they did support me, and it was the parents behind me were fantastic. And being a kid growing up in the Midwest, all I heard about was the clubs out in L.A., you know, Van Halen and, you know, the Stardust and Whiskey and all these clubs. And the first thing Dave Mustaine said is screw the clubs in L.A., we're going to San Francisco to play. Because he had just spent a lot of time up here with Metallica, and of course this is really the epicenter of thrash metal up here. So the first shows we did in February and then April, I believe, of 1984, first shows Megadeth ever did were right up here in the Bay Area. So we definitely have Bay Area blood running through our veins. You know, I was born and raised in a Lutheran family. You know, went to church on Sunday. Nothing fanatical. You know, no charismatic. It wasn't, you know, revivals or anything like that. It was just pretty much, you know, middle America, go to church on Sunday kind of stuff. But you know, we prayed over meals, and it was just a good, solid upbringing. You know, my parents were solid. My family was solid. So when I moved out to L.A., of course, I kind of moved away from that. I was a young man, and obviously getting into rock and roll and getting a career going and stuff. And but when I moved out of L.A., especially, you know, in 1990, I cleaned my life up. I cleaned my act up. I was involved in drugs and alcohol, and it really took me down a lot of bad roads. And I tell you what, my faith from a kid helped anchor me back, so I had something to return to. And I consider myself very blessed with that, because once I got cleaned up and I got sober and then carried on. Part of that walk is about, you're either going to grow toward the drugs or you're going to grow to God. It's that simple, you know. And it's like, if the God thing scares you out, the drugs will scare you back in, you know. So at some point you have a decision to make. And for me, I was like, you know what, man, cool is fool. And if you want to be cool, and if you're too cool for the Lord, then you're probably going to die. I mean, so to me, it was kind of that clear. So as I've developed my faith and really returned back to my Lutheran roots growing up, you know, I've raised my kids like that, and I'd like to think my family's it's solid, you know, and I've become my dad, you know, to some degree. But that's what you're supposed to do when you bring kids into the world. You have a new responsibility. Playing rock and roll is great. Playing music is cool, but never at the expense of your own soul, or certainly the soul of others. And I think that is a responsibility that we feel even on stage with Megadeth. You know, Dave and I have been very open about our faith. We've been very public about it. Our reconciliation and me coming back to the band, we're very open about what that's about. And as a result of that, you know, we don't have to go beat people over the head with a Bible or chase them around or anything like that. But when asked about it, I do feel the responsibility to tell the truth about the walk, you know, and let that journey be out there, because we definitely live in a dark world, you know, and out here playing rock and roll and playing heavy metal, I mean, this whole world is to a large degree designed to be like, hey, man, it's rock and roll, anything goes. And I did that life, and it did not work well. And now I do this new life. This one's a lot better. You know, it's an interesting thing, because for opening riffs of the first couple of bars of the opening of our show is a really subdued light, and then right on the cue, bang, you know, and the downbeat is when it hits, and it's cool, man. That's that thing we all grew up wanting to do, you know. And up on stage every night, I'm like, this is cool. I still get to do this. It's cool to see the people freak out, the lights, the smoke, everything happening. It's you know, living the dream for sure. It's an awesome deal.
You guys having a good time tonight? Let's help our friend Sean out. Let's get those hands up. Come on, hey.
Relations position that I held for several years in my time away from Megadeth was great. I really enjoyed it. It was cool. I have a kind of a business aptitude, you know. I like being balanced. You know, there's the one side of the brain, which is the creative thing, and then there's the other, which is the, you know, my business mindset. And I guess it's probably certainly ingrained in me from my dad and whatnot. But you know, I'm glad I have that, because I'm able to do both. And you know, even out here being in a rock and roll band, you know, everybody sees the hour that we're on stage. They listen to the records, and obviously they hear us being creative and playing and performing and stuff. But that is, you know, quite honestly, that's oftentimes a small part of our day. We spend a lot of time doing interviews. There's obviously business that needs to be dealt with. There's merchandising. There's all kinds of different things that we have to deal with, even as the creative guys. And so it's good, I think, to be able to, you know, to have those aptitudes. Usually every band has one or two guys like me in it, you know, that kind of are the benchmark, you know. And it's good, because everybody can't be like me, but yet everybody can't be just completely off the chart with no anchor into the real world either. So, I mean, the dynamic of bands are usually the same. You know, there's like these same kind of 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 guys, but the personalities in every band are almost always the same. And I've got this belief that you pick up an instrument based on what kind of a person you are. You know what I mean? Like bass players, we're kind of a tribe. Drummers, they're another tribe. Singers, they're a tribe. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like there's a different character mindset that goes with those instruments, and the ability to really take that out there and really kick it and really do it live on the stage. It really takes a certain personality to be able to do that in each band position. Regarding the bass lines, back in the early days, it was cool for me because I grew up studying a lot of different music. I played in jazz band as a kid because I actually played tenor sax before I picked up the bass, and before that I took my piano lessons. And so I learned how to read music and treble and bass clef. So once I started playing bass, I was just always looking for an opportunity to play. So I put my own bands together. I got invited and auditioned into other bands. And then when the jazz band opportunity came, I thought, yeah, this is cool, because I wanted to be a really good bass player. I love rock and roll. I love metal. That's my main thing, man. As a passion, that's what I like. But I also wanted to be well-rounded. So, I learned how country guys play. I learned how jazz guys play. I learned how, bossa nova and reggae guys play, and I don't play that for a living, but it's important for me. If I'm going to be a professional player, I need to know how all of it works. Like a mechanic, you can't just fix the brakes. You got to know how to, if you get into the cylinders, the spark plugs, transmission, you need to know all the components of it. And so for me, it's the same thing being a bass player. I want to be well versed. So being able to play some of the jazz music. When Dave and I got together and we started doing Megadeth, our abilities were really, we really shredded on the metal, but because of, for me, the bass parts having some of this jazz influence, man, I was able to really kick these bass lines out to a whole new level. And over the years, I pretty much approach it the same way. I just now maybe have a little bit more maturity to know when I can shred and when I should pull back. Well, it's great to be back here in the Bay Area, of course. This is the origins of Megadeth, and you can catch me, davidellefson.com. Of course, anything with Megadeth, megadeth.com. We're all over Facebook, MySpace, all that stuff. That's the way of the new world, so we will see you at the show.